Hi, this is Victor Morganti from Fact Engine. We're going to look at automated test case generation from a conceptual model, and for this demonstration we're going to focus on the aerospace industry. The aerospace industry is a highly visual industry where a lot of focus is put on the hardware. So we're looking at a satellite, and if we think about a launch, the launch is a highly visual aspect of the aerospace industry when we're first launching missions into space. And even when we think of what happens on the ground, we once again have the highly visual aspect of the rocket being launched. But we can't forget about all the other people that are associated with the launch of satellites and missions into space, and those who are operating all of the IT equipment that support the mission. So even when we're designing satellites, it's still a highly visual industry where a lot of focus is put on the design of the rockets and satellites that are put into space. And we also have quite a lot of effort put into those people who are focused on the IT systems that support the mission once a payload is put into space. So there is a lot of emphasis on the engineers that design satellites. We can't forget about all of the IT people who work behind the scenes, who write the software that support the satellite or the payload once it reaches space or orbit. And it's that interconnect between IT systems and the hardware which is very important, because there's no rescue for a satellite or a mission once it reaches space apart from the connection that ground stations have with the satellite or payload once it reaches space. Otherwise we end up with, and I'm not sure if you can see that, a satellite that's turned into a ghost satellite that's lost in space and not reachable anymore by ground stations. And we're all very familiar with the famous case of a lander that slammed into Mars because the rockets fired too late or not at all, because of a data error. So a NASA mission had a probe slam into Mars because there was a difference between how data was measured in Canada as opposed to America, so the difference between feet and inches and meters. And if we don't get the data quality right, then the results can be catastrophic. So let's have a look at the conceptual model for a telemetry system for a satellite, and we're looking at an object role model for a telemetry system where we've got a satellite that has thermal readings, attitude readings, commands, an orbit position, power readings, events that happen, different sensors that are on the satellite, telemetry packets and error conditions. I want to focus on error condition for this example, so we're just going to morph to the error condition object role model, and we're seeing that an error condition has a code, so we can identify what sort of error condition has happened. We can see that it has a detection time, it has a severity level, low, medium, high and critical. So this is a value constraint for severity, that it's constrained to low, medium, high and critical. We can see that it's mandatory that it has a detection time and has a severity level. It's mandatory for the error condition, the satellite that it applies to. Now, test cases can be extremely time consuming to produce. So what Boston Enterprise supports is the ability to select a element within the object role model, right click on the element and create test cases particular to that particular model element. So I'm going to click on that, and we're offered a project. So this is within the telemetry project, and you can see in the top left hand side in the Model Explorer that we're in the telemetry project. So Boston Enterprise supports different projects and projects with their models. We're going to assign that to an existing test plan, and we're going to give the test set a name. So we're going to call it error condition testing and give it a number. So the first time we're going to do that error condition testing, or the first set that we're going to generate. This is actually the second set, so I'm going to put 2, and we get to select the test type. So from documentation, fitness of use, functionality, installability, maintainability, etc. And we're going to test functionality, and we're going to do a unit test, so the test phase, and generate the test cases. So rather than generate all the test cases by hand, we're going to just click a button, and we're going to confirm that we want to create a new test set. Yes, and it's finished creating those test cases already. And if we go to test management in Boston Enterprise and select test manager, and we're just going to load the telemetry project. Yes, so we're in the test manager in Boston Enterprise. Now you might ask the question, why do you need a test management piece of software within a conceptual modelling piece of software? And there's one primary reason, is that many of your test cases for your applications are going to be driven solely and purely by the constraints that are put in your data model. So Boston Enterprise supports a very verbose test management piece of software, which allows you to have test plans, and we've got a test plan that's already assigned to the telemetry project, and it's got a start date of the 31st of October and a planned end date of the 8th of November 2025. And we've created a new test set, error condition testing 2, and these are all the test cases that have been generated automatically. Now there's multiple ways of navigating around the test manager, but I'm going to make this as visual as possible and just focus on the description. So all your test cases have got test codes, so you can identify them by their code. So ECT T2 001 for instance, and that particular test case tests that the detection time, must be set for the data type temporal to the data type temporal date time for the error condition detection, where detection time is temporal date time. So we're making sure that the, if I can find the OR model again, so the detection time is set to its data type, and if I go to its properties, you can see that its data type is temporal date and time. So if I go back to the test manager now, a whole suite of test cases have automatically been generated, including the value constraints for severity, low, medium, high and critical. And if we look at the test steps for testing whether the severity is set to medium, we can see that all the test steps have been created as well. Now you can edit these depending on your particular requirements, whether you're generating a JSON file or an XML file, or whether you're storing data in the database. And we're saying we're creating an error condition, we're setting the severity to medium, we're saving the instance, we're reloading the instance, and we're checking to see that the severity is set to medium. So we're checking to see that we can set it to medium, and we got expected results. So you were allowed to set the severity to medium. Now there should be an outlier there as well, where we're testing, in this case here, we're testing to see whether or not we can set a value outside of low, medium, high and critical. So we've saved a lot of time by automatically generating those test cases. Now you can get more real estate if you just edit the test case and bring it into its own window, and that gives you a lot more room to work with the test steps and the expected results, and you can add and edit those. If we go back to the test plan manager and we're looking at Boston Enterprise inside the browser, we can go to the test set itself, and we can export that test set as XML, and it'll download to an XML file that contains all of the test cases and the test steps in XML. So I'll just open that, and there's all the test cases and the test steps in XML, and you can export those to other test systems if you need to, and if they support test case importation. So we can do test runs inside Boston Enterprise as well. So if we create a test cycle and select all of those test cases, I should be able to multi-click on those. Let's just drag a few over one by one. So the latest version lets you select all of these at once. So once you've dragged over your test cases to be allocated to a test cycle, you can allocate a tester, so a test person, to the test case, and we're going to allocate all of those test cases to myself, so to Victor Morganti. So now when we select the other test cases, they've been allocated to me. Now I'm logged in as administrator, so I'm going to allocate them all to me as the administrator. And when you log into Boston, you get a set of test cases that are allocated to you in your tasks. Now I'm going to refresh that, and there should be a bunch more that have just been allocated to me. So I can right click on a particular test case and do a test run for that test case. So I'm going to start a test run, and I'm going to give it a verdict. So I'm going to say, in this case, it passed. If I had any notes, I can put notes. Double click on the complete date to set its completion date, and when you're satisfied that that test run is closed and complete, just click closed and complete, and you can no longer edit that particular test run. Now if I go back to the test manager and reselect the test cycle, I can see automatically, by way of automatic reporting, that that particular test case has been completed and that it's passed, and any notes that I have there. for that particular test run. So there's a lot more to the test plan manager, but a main feature is that we can automatically generate test cases based on the constraints that have been specified in our object role model, and save ourselves an exorbitant amount of time by automatically generating test cases with their test steps that we can edit and their expected results. So you can edit them in the grid, or you can use these text boxes down here. So that's a brief outlook of automated test case generation inside Boston Enterprise, with test management inside the conceptual modeling tool that allows you to generate test cases with test steps and export those as XML for import into another test tool if you don't want to do your testing and test management inside Boston Enterprise itself. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.